Hello, I'm Beverley Dean, and I'm here to talk to you about our family journey. Um, the thing is, with our family journey, it's quite an inspiration to other families. William was born and he had quite a traumatic early years, but despite all of that, he's thriving. It's easy to forget that as he's got older and stronger. So what I wanted to do was to share so that if people are going through the early years and they had a lot of medical problems, they can actually see that for some children, um, they actually do move on and thrive. So William was born in 2005, and today he's a young man. He's 16. He's in mainstream school. We're based in Durham in the north east of England, and he goes to our local school. And it's been quite a journey over the past 16 years. Our story began before William was born. We knew he had Down syndrome before his birth. It was picked up with testing. We had blood tests that were inconclusive, and amniocentesis confirmed. I did worry about having one in case we lost him, but for us, we just wanted to know either way. When we found out that he did have Down syndrome, the hospital staff didn't really have any information about who we could contact for support or anything. The assumption was termination. And so they scratched around and gave us a bit of paper, which was the contact details of a specialist health visitor. And she supported us until he went to school. So the tests during our pregnancy increased, and they changed to actually looking for problems with Down syndrome. William's heart was checked, and this was a 4-day scan that we had, so we got to see his face. He was named before he was born. We got to see his face, we got to see him, and like sort of everything just seemed fine. And then we found out he had duodenal and he needed surgery. That is basically where his tummy was blocked, just past his stomach. So his small intestine, it wouldn't allow the food to go through his tummy, which meant that he had to have life-saving surgery within hours of being born. But it was all discussed. We knew everything. We even went and visit the ward that he was going to be in and the ICU ward that he was going to be in, and we met the nurse and staff. It was all expected and planned. So William came about 4 weeks early. So he was a little bit earlier than what we expected. We did think he was going to come early, and I did have some injections to help develop his lungs. And he spent the night in the intensive care unit in our local hospital. It was all planned that he would go to the next hospital to have his surgery the next day. He ended up going a bit earlier than expected, because they had put a little nasal tube down to drain his tummy, and basically the surgeons were expecting him, and they just wanted to fix him, and that was it. So it was quite a funny night because I couldn't be with him. He was in the IC unit, and I kept getting up. I couldn't go to sleep. I kept going up to see him. I kept going up to touch him, and just to see him. And he was just being looked after by other people. So it was quite strange. It was my second baby, so it wasn't the same experience as my first. So once he got discharged the next morning, he went through to the RVI for his hospital, and we followed after I was discharged, which took a little bit while to do. Things didn't really go to plan, and this is where things sort of unravelled. He had his first operation like hours after he was born, but then basically other things started to evolve. So he got quite poorly, and he got really, really, really poorly. And we were in intensive care for about a month. And basically had a bowel leak, and so they had to go back to hospital and back into the surgery, and we were living in hospital, and it was quite stressful. It was quite traumatic. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen. We didn't know whether he would actually survive. He was failing to thrive at the time. It was very, very, very traumatic. We came home, and we were home briefly after 2 months, and then we were put straight back into hospital because he wasn't pooing, and then they diagnosed Hirschsprung's disease. For those who don't know Hirschsprung's disease, it's where the nerves in your bowel don't work, and so you can't push the poo out. And again, he needed to have some more life-saving surgery, and he had his first stoma added when he was about 2 months old. So we spent a lot of time in hospital. His first like sort of 2 months, he had about 8 operations, 8 general anaesthetics. Hospital was our home, and this is William's older brother Joseph, and Joseph used to come to visit. And so it was really unfolding the amount of complications we had. We weren't really expecting that. We thought he would be born and we would just go home. But he had a lot of operations, a lot of intervention. But when he was awake, he was very bright and stimulated, and he looked at Joseph, he looked at us, he knew who we were. So we had a delay to our family life. We were home a lot. And we continued to have lots of medical appointments, and William was NG fed like sort of for 24 hours a day and night. He had a bit of sleep apnea as well. We seemed to go through one thing and then like sort of get another medical condition. So it was quite a bit of a roller coaster, and Joseph was at school. Later on, he got diagnosed as being deaf. He had a severe hearing loss. And then when he was about 6-7 months old, he had West syndrome, which was a form of epilepsy. And I think this was the worst time for us. The West syndrome, the fitting, he lost everything. There was a lot of brain damage. He lost the ability to sit up. He didn't recognise us, and he was fitting all of the time. He was fitting when he went to sleep. He was fitting when he woke up. And it was a time when I would just cry a lot because there was nothing I could do apart from to make sure that he was safe and he couldn't harm himself. And we really didn't know what the future held because he'd had a lot of trauma the first year of his life. He was in and out of hospital. He had a lot of complications, and we didn't really know what the future would hold. But what we did is we tried to have a lot of fun with William and to take each day at a time, and we balanced in looking after our other son. We did a lot of therapies. We got involved with a lot of intervention groups. We got involved with a lot of Down syndrome groups local to us. We looked to try and find a balance between all the medical appointments and the intervention in our family life. We had another son. It was difficult. It was very traumatic. And sometimes we would just rest and not engage with anything and just try to be a family. Other times I would try to join every single group that was going. We found underwater swimming brilliant. He just did loads of things. So the early years for William were very, very traumatic, and the biggest thing that I would say to anybody to take away from it is to find a balance and actually to be yourself and to find your family. And it's okay to actually not get involved with things, just to have time for yourself and find those precious moments, but also to enjoy and not think too far ahead. Like sort of I did have a very traumatic time. We didn't know what the future held, but it did actually come out the other end. So I put a little bit about supporting siblings in my presentation because that is one of the things that a lot of people are looking for. It is very difficult because Joseph did actually spend a lot of time with his brother in a hospital, and he did at a point decide he didn't want to go into hospital. He started to think he wasn't going to come home when he was really little. But that brotherly bond did grow, and we did do a lot of things together. Joseph was there whether he was in hospital or whether he was at home, and now he's studying to be a doctor. So a lot of this has actually inspired Joseph himself to be a medical profession and to go and help other people. So I think he thinks he might be a GP or a paediatrician. I'd be a fantastic paediatrician if he does go down that route. If Joseph was here, he would actually say, from a sibling's point of view, it's actually, you know, what we did for him. From our point of view, it was actually making time for Joseph. And, you know, even if I was only going to be in school for 2 minutes, I would go to an event and see him. And sometimes the staff were brilliant at school. I knew I had a medical appointment to go to. There would be a school show on that Joseph was doing. I would rush in. They would seat me at the front. I would get eye contact with Joseph, wave at him, and then I would probably leave early because I had to be somewhere else with William. And it was actually, you know, trying to be in two places at the same time. It was very difficult, but I did try to be there for both of them when they actually needed it. We drip fed him information as well. We didn't really hide what was going on, but we didn't tell him all of the truth because some of it was quite sad. And he has been involved in William's decision makings over the years. So if Joseph was here, he would give you a sibling point of view, and he just remembers his childhood and having fun. He grew up with other children with disabilities, and he never saw their disabilities, he saw them as children. And he does enjoy having one-to-one time with his brother, and he enjoys having one-to-one time with us as well. So it's actually just that building the bonds and being a family. So in 2005, mainstream education was purely a dream. And if I was talking back to my sort of person then, I would actually say, you know, just don't worry, just enjoy, because I wasn't quite sure what the future held. And we're quite lucky because William's in our local mainstream school. So he successfully transitioned, getting tongue-tied, all of the way, and that was despite of his complex health needs. He's had a number of challenges. He's still hearing impaired. He's got a stoma. He needs personal care. His speech is delayed, and everything has been going on with him medically. But his behaviour-wise was the key, because he can behave in school and he thrives in a school setting, and he brings a lot into school, as well as they take out. So he's gone through mainstream primary and secondary here in the northeast of England. We chose a school that would support William, and we were very lucky because we had one right on our doorstep. We chose one that already had children with Down syndrome and that had that experience. We had thought about William attending Joseph's school, but then we decided against it, and he ended up spending 9 years in his first school because he started when he was about 3 years old, and he repeated a year, and so he ended up being there quite a long time because he went through preschool and up into the different stages, which are Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 here in the UK. So in his nursery years, we did a lot of play therapy. William was delayed. He did seem to be much younger in development wise than his peers with Down syndrome, and that was due to a lot of the medical conditions he had and a lot of the surgery. He was deaf. I remember the first time we got his hearing aids and we put them in, I put a noisy flashy toy behind him and he heard it and he turned around, and that was just it was one of those light bulb moments. He could actually hear and we hadn't realised he was deaf. So there was a whole thing about supporting a deaf child. There was lots of things to do with his fine motor skills. There was a lot of problems because he was tube fed a lot of the time, that he couldn't drink properly. It took a long time to actually evolve him from drinking out of a bottle to a straw to a cup. And then he just seemed to just go from one session to another. He has had a highly differentiated curriculum throughout, and he's been scaffolding to support and input from speech and language and occupational therapists. we're actually ever been moving into his timetable, and we've had regular meetings with school about his progress and how he is. So he just moved from Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 2. We did repeat a year because we had another bout of surgery and he had another 6 operations. So it ended up, he missed a lot of school, so he ended up repeating his year. He did make progress and we did small steps. And then there was questions about why he wasn't talking. So at the end of primary school, the speech therapist suggested to look at other reasons why speech hadn't developed. And so we started an autism assessment in 2015, and autism was confirmed in 2017, just after he transitioned to secondary school. Transitioning was always a long time. We would look around to work out which school was the best, and it turned out that the best school was actually our local mainstream secondary school. They had experience of having children with Down syndrome before. They just transitioned one, and they were very pleased to get another child with Down syndrome, and he's taken a lot into that school. He's very proud to be there. He's highly differentiated curriculum. You know, and the gap does get bigger, but he has got so much out of being in school, and the other children have got so much out of him being there. He's very happy, he's well behaved, he's a role model to the others, and he just enjoys being in school. So we use our Special Stories app as a sort of homeschool communication. So I've started to get a lot of photographs about what he does in school, and also we do a lot of photographs of what he does. So it's important to have that communication with professionals, and also allow him, especially since he doesn't talk, to actually understand what he's doing. William, it was quite amazing because William was awarded a Mayor's Award at school for his achievement, and we were just so amazed. We went to parents' evening, and it was just before the start of the first lockdown with coronavirus, and the teachers were just so pleased to have him in his school. He was a joy to teach. They enjoyed having him. Some of the teachers even said to me that they wished he was back in his class. Obviously with lockdowns and coronavirus, he hasn't had the same, like all the other children, he hasn't had the same experience with school over the past 2 or 3 years. And he's in a little bubble by with a small number of children, but like sort of it is something that he enjoys being with, and then we're looking to the next stages. So I just thought they would just show you some things that he's doing, because William would do his PE, he would be supported by other peers with his PE. He enjoys cooking, he enjoyed the science, looking at the experiments, you know, so a lot of things are woven into his class. I think looking back, taking away about my journey through from his school age years, is that to say that mainstream school is an option. It can work well. You have to build relationships with people, professionals, and you've got to have some transparency. The key for success is behaviour. I think one of the teachers said to me once that if he was going to move into another setting, it would either be when he decided he didn't fit in mainstream school, or whether he actually misbehaved and the behaviour was a problem. And these are just some other pictures about the things that we've done over the years. He enjoys a number of different things, supported by his brother, lives life to the full. And that's our family story. Thank you for listening.